And today we have Jessica and Tim, and they are a duo, and they have an art and design studio in Chicago. And they will talk about a project that they have been working on, and it's upcoming at the Walker Museum of Art. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a show that's on now, actually, at the Walker Art Centre. It's almost the same.
Yeah.
Called Designs for Different Futures. And I think that opened in November last year, and then it closed again, and it opened again until April.
Yeah, I think I think it would be really interesting for your members. Actually, it's such a wide-ranging exhibition. It mixes artworks and design works that are kind of speculating on the future with actual products from now that are kind of hinting at where certain trends and markets are going. So it's kind of fascinating to walk around the show because you're like, is this real or is this fake? Which is obviously relevant to our talk.
Okay, well, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's a real honor to be able to come and present for you tonight and to expose our work to a new audience.
Yeah, definitely.
So we thought the best way to really give you an insight into our practice is to actually try to take you sort of into the studio and give you a little talk and a sort of behind the scenes look. So we have a short film that we're going to play for you, which shows the studio. It shows this project that we've been working on. It kind of introduces it, and there's also a kind of slide talk segment in that film as well, which gives you more insight into the research behind the project. So then obviously that's going to run for about 25 minutes, and then we'll obviously talk a little bit more. We'll update you as to where the project is now, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, definitely. And just let us know if the video is having any issues, but I'm just going to share it now.
Yeah. I don't know if you folks are into using the chat, but feel free to drop questions in there and we'll try and respond to them.
Great. Yeah, just let us know if there's any issues. Welcome to our studio. My name is Jess.
And I'm Tim. And we're here in East Garfield Park in Chicago, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes tour.
So over the past few years, we've been working on a multi-part project called Catalogue for the Post-Human, and it's about human enhancement and the future of work. One particular outcome is a vending machine that's currently on show at the Designs for Different Futures exhibition at the Walker Art Centre.
We're going to talk about the concepts and themes behind the project and how we're currently extending it for the Venice Architecture Biennale.
To begin with, we're going to show a short film we made about the project for the Venice Architecture Biennale.
Catalogue for the Posthuman is a satirical installation that uses the future of work and human enhancement to draw attention to the nature of our post-human condition.
Building from the theme of the Biennale, the project asks, how will we live together if we are alienated by our working conditions and forced to augment ourselves to stay competitive?
The previous version of the project featured 6 objects presented in a mock vending machine at the Designs for Different Futures exhibition at the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Drawing upon research into data-driven working patterns, the corrosive effects of the gig economy, automation and theories of the post-human, the project for Venice uses the setting of a trade fair to present a collection of body-related objects for workers of the near future.
Under the guise of fictional retailer Catalogue for the Posthuman, we present a collection of objects that mock the contemporary capitalist's need to be permanently cognitively sharp, quantifying yourself with data, and able to work the long and irregular hours assigned by algorithm-led corporations.
Such potential futures suggest we will be expected to further merge with technology, physically, psychologically, and socially. What are the logical conclusions of the work-life changes we're already seeing? How will AI, brain-computer interfaces, and constant corporate surveillance impact our behaviour? What are the physical and psychological consequences of giving over body and mind to the unrelenting productivity of data-driven capitalism?
In the Venice installation, products are offered by the catalogue under 4 themes: cognitive management, expedited recovery, optimized wellness, and enhanced productivity.
Products in the cognitive management section suggest workers of the future will be expected to use cognitive enhancing drugs to increase performance.
Products for expedited recovery focus on how we might sleep efficiently and wake immediately ready for work.
In optimized wellness, we find products that replenish lost fluids on the move or boost gut bacteria.
Designs in the enhanced productivity section monetize the body through advertising, monitor stress levels, or reduce the need to take breaks.
By encountering new products that help users cope with a society that is no longer human-centered, but is instead propelled and mediated by post-human systems, the viewer is challenged to consider how technology is being applied in this impending future.
Now we'd like to share with you in a bit more detail the origins and ideas behind the Catalogue for the Posthuman project and show you the piece in Designs for Different Futures. But to begin with, we wanted to tell you a little bit about our backgrounds.
I studied three-dimensional design in Manchester at undergraduate level and design interactions at London's Royal College of Art at graduate level.
And I studied industrial design at undergrad and also went to the RCA to study a master's program called Design Products. We had separate careers in teaching and design research before moving to Chicago in 2010. A few years later, we set up our own studio. And the work we do now combines our design backgrounds and often results in speculative objects that encourage reflection upon particular subjects such as death, happiness, survival, climate change, or the future of work.
This Venn diagram here illustrates where our areas of interest currently lie. We're looking at the intersection of design as storytelling, provocation through the use of objects and services, imagery, and often set in and out of context, speculating on new rituals and behaviours we may adopt. Also exploring impacts of emerging technologies, science on society and everyday life, and overlapping that with borrowing futures methodologies to speculate on alternative futures. The origins of the Catalogue for the Posthuman project go back 6 years. In 2014, the Open Society Foundations, or the OSF, who are a grant-making organisation that promotes social justice, began a huge study about technology and the future of work. The idea was to move beyond the binaries like automation taking jobs to understand the landscape in more detail. The impetus behind the project was that new research questions have arisen, such as how has technology shaped not just the number of jobs, but also the nature of work? In OSF's own words, the ultimate question then is how precisely technology will change life for various kinds of American workers.
We chose to focus on human enhancement technologies, in other words, technologies we use on and in the body to increase our capabilities. We felt that human enhancement technologies inhabit a critical space in the debate about technology displacing work because they problematize the divide between technology and people. For example, if you're wearing a headset that enables you to concentrate better, or an exoskeleton that helps you lift things, your capabilities are being enhanced by those technologies. And with many areas of the workforce becoming increasingly reliant on technology to gain competitive advantage, the issues are not merely about jobs being replaced by technology, but the implications of people becoming technology in order to remain employable. So part of our research for the project was to understand the extent of the human enhancement technologies out there already. We then extrapolated these to consider what products might appear in the near future. We then had to decide on the format to convey this information. Some of you may remember SkyMal. It was a catalogue that used to be distributed on commercial flights. The great thing about it was that insane product ideas were mixed in with reasonable ones. So it really made you think, are they serious? We wanted to borrow that format so viewers were placed in the position of questioning what they were looking at and saying, is this a good idea? And what are the implications of this on the people using it? So the project had two components, a research document and this speculative catalogue of future human enhancement technology products for the workplace. The idea of the catalogue was to produce a speculative design that could act as a document for labour advocates and workers to use when discussing technology and the future of work. It had a satirical tone, but the ideas behind it were serious and related to real technologies. The products were aimed at employers, employees, and independent contractors or gig economy workers. It had three sections: physical augmentation, mental augmentation, and training, monitoring, and data gathering. We've no idea exactly how Open Society Foundations used the catalogue we made, but we realised in doing it that this format of a fictional catalogue of products could be useful to help anyone discuss these issues.
In 2019, we were commissioned to create a tangible version of the catalogue for the Designs for Different Futures exhibition. This was a collaboration between the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Walker Art Center, and the Art Institute of Chicago. And this is the catalogue from the show, which is definitely worth a read. There are many fantastic essays from the curatorial team along with images from the projects in the show. And I'm sure it's definitely available from the Walker Shop.
It is, I checked.
Oh, okay. We created a vending machine containing 6 objects and an interactive touchscreen interface that would allow you to find out more about each one. Rather than just making some of the objects from the catalogue, we decided to revisit the subject, conduct more research, and create 6 new products from scratch.
This is an intentionally non-readable slide. Like most design research for corporate work, there is a process of mapping and synthesis, which is what this is about. We try to group our findings, identify themes and sub-themes, and then we pull impactful quotes and try to recognize where there is traction in terms of the issues and arguments. We map these findings against the human enhancement technologies, behavioral changes, and global societal changes. This gave us a master mind map for the project. Most of these findings pointed towards what has been called the rise of the gig economy. Things like a decrease in conventional salaried jobs, fewer benefits, restrictive contracts, older retirement age, increased workplace surveillance, etc. From this big picture map, we then made a more focused map of themes most relevant to the project, including productivity, training, health and medication, AI collaboration, surveillance and monitoring, and profile and reputation. We conducted interviews with experts who were working in the fields of human enhancement technologies and the future of work. And this provided us with some fascinating insights we were able to take into the next stage of the project, which was generating personas from which we derived ideas for objects.
These are the personas we developed from the different strands of our research. We have not got time to go through all of them, but for example, the cognitive enhancer recognizes the variety of cognitive states required for each job and the drugs needed to get them into and out of that state. The next stage was to ask what kind of objects would these personas either choose to use or be compelled or forced to use to stay competitive. We developed these into 6 final ideas. The following slides show the final objects we made for the vending machine. We'll take you through what they are.
This first one is called the Best Selfer. The Best Selfer is a life coach meets astrologist, giving you messages in response to your personal digital analytics, allowing you to base your decisions on the datasets that it is collecting.
The clickbait wear is a line of LED clothing that turns the body into a screen, enabling independent workers to monetize their appearance.
Envisioning a future where we work collaboratively with our own personally trained AI system, Flux AI is a kit that uses ambiguous objects to test bias in your AI's responses.
Commenting on the increased use and misuse of cognitive enhancing drugs, the Newt dial allows users to dial up a cognitive state and take the appropriate neurological pharmaceuticals to achieve it.
Acknowledging the emergent understanding of the gut as our second brain, Mycopops are a range of lollipops containing the probiotic Mycobacterium vaccae, which is found in soil.
And responding to the emerging trend for microdosing psychedelics to improve cognitive states, Morning Ritual imagines a user-friendly set that would make preparation of a microdose akin to making coffee today. Here is a view of the vending machine in the Designs for Different Futures show at the Philadelphia Museum of Art last October. And here it is again at the Walker Art Center.
We wanted to create a piece that didn't immediately scream vending machine. The idea was to display one version of each object and imply through the interface that these could be purchased. However, when you tried to buy one, you tended to find that they were out of stock.
When the piece came to the Walker, due to the pandemic, we couldn't use the touchscreen interface. So we worked with our friends at Our Studio, who helped us create the first interface to make a new version that you could access on your phone. The screen tells you not to touch and to use the QR code to bring up the interface on your phone. In the end, it looked quite convincing, as if this was the intention all along.
You can access this yourself by holding your phone's camera up to the QR code that's on the screen now, or by going to cftph.work in your browser. We're also going to show it to you on the screen now. So this is what the interface will look like when you pull it up on your phone or when you pull it up on the browser. You get a menu screen with the 6 products, and as you click on each one, you're taken to an individual screen about that product. There is a 3D scan which you can rotate, and these were made by 3D scanning natural objects that we made, and you can then pull up the details and a description of each piece. And you can try to buy it, but unfortunately it's not in stock.
So we created 6 different individual information panels for the 6 different objects, and you can rotate each of the objects and investigate them at your pleasure.
There's also a little extra bit of information here about the catalogue, and all of this interface has writing that is kind of in the voice of the catalogue, if you like. It's obviously meant to be a fictional company, so it has to take on a kind of marketing language that a company like that would use if it was trying to sell products.
And you can also sort of dive deep into the world of the catalogue for the Posthuman and sign up for an actual newsletter, which is something that is kind of another layer to the whole project. And we have sent one out already to people who were able to sign up at the exhibition in Philadelphia and at the Walker Art Center. So I definitely encourage you to sign up for future updates.
Welcome back to the studio. Now we've explained the background to the project, we'd like to give you more of a sense of how we develop these objects and show you some of the things we've been working on for Venice. As you will have understood by now, this project is based around the idea of a fictional company. But instead of making products that we think people would want, we're making products that are intended to provoke questions from the audience, guiding you into a space where you can think about the issues and ethics of human enhancement, automation, and labor.
So in a way, we are playing a role as designers, imagining how these products would work and what would they need to be made of to exist. The objects have been created using a design process not that different to a commercial product development phase. Following on from what we just discussed, researching and creating personas, we use sketching, model making, and prototyping to manifest these ideas into a tangible form. On the table here, you can see a few things like sample tests, some things we've made using sewing and gluing, and some raw materials, fabric samples that we've obtained to get a sense of what they would be like, colours and finishes and textures.
We tend to have quite a lot of materials in the studio, often keeping things around that we don't know exactly when we're going to use, but that gives us a lot of raw materials that we can draw upon so that we can get a real sense of what things actually look and feel like in a given situation.
At the moment, we are working on a wearable object called the sleep snacker that is made up of 3 parts. To start to figure out the shape of these wearables, we've been making paper patterns.
Here is a model of the sleep snacker. This piece is meant to help people take short naps by modulating their core body temperature and providing cushioning for their neck. We began by wrapping tape around a mannequin head that is covered in saran wrap, cutting these pieces out, cutting darts to flatten them, and then using them as a template to overlay onto fabric. These fabric pieces are then sewn together to create a base layer. So here you can see me just taking off the paper patterns that we've been using.
Throughout the process of making any of these catalogue for the post-human objects, we do a lot of sketching and imagining ourselves as the role of the designers of this fictional corporation.
So here you can see a range of sketches that we did for this piece, that we started off quite small and just getting a feel for the overall forms, and we went through various different iterations, some of which had visors in them, for example, that we later dropped, and finally you can see the form that we're working on right now.
As part of our process, we collect a lot of inspiration images to help guide us in selecting colours, textures and materials. In particular, we are always interested in speculating on what new material and manufacturing innovations there may be that might affect the future of colours and textures and materials of these objects. We often look into this ideas of the circular economy and what that might mean for new materials such as biopolymers.
So here are some of the sample pieces that we've been making for the sleep snacker, looking at things like iridescent fabrics. Here we are stretching fabrics over EVA foam that's been sewn into sort of neoprene backing, and we're layering up different fabrics, things like different meshes, and laying that over foam with neoprene on top. I kind of like this idea of showing different layers through the piece so that we can get different effects. And then on the back we have these sort of silicon 3D prints and sort of resin elements that are supposed to show some of the more sort of functional aspects of this piece. And finally, this is this kind of plastic biopolymer that we've been playing with. This is an exhibition system we'll be using called Abstractor that was designed in Denmark in the 60s by Paul Cadovius and is now produced in Michigan by Consort Display Systems. It's a simple system of poles and connectors that allows you to create space frames. We're using it to create pedestals, and these will be used to show the various products. The screens will have a series of animations that show more information about each of the pieces. As we mentioned in the film, the Venice installation takes the form of a trade show booth. It's made up of a series of abstractor units that will display each of the products. And we've been using this scale model as a mock-up to help us to figure out what goes where and how much space it's going to take up in the show.
So previously you saw the clickbait wear piece in one of our slides earlier. This wearable headpiece is made of LEDs that scroll across under a visor made from dichroic film. We're currently in the process of making a second piece for the Venice Architecture Biennale show.
The piece is made of 4 LED matrices that are plugged together, and there's an Arduino board in the middle which controls the animations.
So here is Tim setting up the morning ritual microdosing kit that consists of a walnut base, a glass tester, a dispenser, a small cup, Post-its, and a pen for writing your intentions. The idea was to borrow aesthetics from executive desk sets to create something that looked like it belonged in the home and looked less like a chemistry set.
We've also created a limited edition series of artworks derived from the graphic elements of the project. One example is this enamel pin, which features the Catalogue for the Posthuman logo. You can see all of these items on the shop page of our website.
We hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into our world. We will be continuing this project for the next few months as we prepare for the Venice show.
And if you want to see how it develops, you can follow our progress on Instagram. And we look forward to answering your questions in the Q&A that's coming up.
Hello, we're back.
So yeah, I hope that gave you a good sense of what we're up to. We made that film, I don't know, what, 6 weeks ago, maybe?
Yeah, the beginning of January.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, things have moved on a little bit since then. We've got about 2 weeks before we have to ship the pieces for the Venice installation. And so it's one of those down to the wire things. 2.5 weeks. Am I frightening you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think basically what we're showing in Venice, as you may have gathered, is a mixture of some of the pieces from the vending machine and a few new pieces. So yeah, some of the things we've been looking at are we're making a piece that helps you test your own sort of cortisol levels. So as a sort of stress test object that will be worn on your wrist. There's this piece that Jess was briefly referring to earlier, this inflatable kind of jacket, which is actually for giving yourself an IV, which is actually not recommended without proper training. You're likely to give yourself an embolism.
But this is not now. It's speculative.
No, so obviously they're sort of speculative and kind of. I think all of these pieces, you know, as we said in the film, they're not things that we definitely advocate for. They're things which we feel are sort of indicative of the way in which society seems to be going, so we're hoping to try and use these objects to kind of question those things. So yeah, I won't go through everything. I want to give people a chance to ask questions, and we're happy to kind of elaborate on either on the work or on our practice more broadly. So yeah, unless there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, actually, if well, I was going to talk about the people that we're asked to make this inflatable piece. This is an example of when we can't always make our own things. We try and do a lot of it ourselves at the moment, and I think we don't always get funding for a lot of these projects. But this one thing that we've invested in is this piece for this inflatable wearable piece, and we found these incredible cool group of people who run a business where they make wearable inflatables, and it's called, it will self-explain by the name of the company. It's called Candy Coated Kink, and they are specifically orientated to making PVC sort of costumes. I think it started out as like a killer whale outfit that people would wear, but now they just go into lots of different directions. So you can dress up as a dragon or any creature you can think of, and they make these incredible suits. And they're very sort of tailor-made and handmade, and it's using the same principles of pattern making, but they're working with PVC and adhesive. So we found those people to sort of get us to make this very custom piece. And yeah, they're pretty amazing. I just hope it turns up.
Yeah.
But so yeah. But yeah, totally happy to answer any questions that anyone has or queries.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think we have a question in the chat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Are the speakers familiar with Katsuo Ishiguro's just published book Clara and the Sun? And any thoughts on the parallels between their work and Ishiguro's? Oh yeah, that's such a great reference. We just learned about that book recently. He always, yeah, we haven't read it yet, but I'm totally excited about it.
Yeah.
And
I think, yeah.
Excuse me, people can also speak up. If you want to write in chat, you can do that, or you can unmute or open your video and ask directly the question.
Yeah, so there's a great question from Gabrielle, who says, have you ever located or used any of your works outside of a formal exhibit to see what the public's reaction was, e.g. placing the vending machine in a lobby of an office building, or wearing the napping headset on a bus to see what the reaction was? The answer is we haven't done that yet, but originally, I think the Walker Art Center were thinking about putting the vending machine out in the foyer of the gallery, but I think they changed their minds.
Yeah, we were going to be a lot more integrated into the larger scale, sort of the more public areas, even more public areas of the museum.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. I would like to do something a bit more like that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you do get that opportunity to catch people when they're not in kind of gallery mode in their heads. So
yeah, that's true.
I think, yeah, we do have some friends who always kind of create work that is sort of in the public realm and is called the sort of experiential futures. And I think that's it's a really interesting way of working. I think because we're not really trained in performance, I think that it slightly worries us a bit, but I do think it could be very effective, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that enables, I mean, ideally we'd love to, and we would have had more opportunities to do programming and conversations at the Walker. I think that was something that we were going to implement, like a futures curriculum for the museum originally, and that was an opportunity for us to sort of open up and have conversations about the work with public and have those provocative discussions about what each object is saying or doing. So I think that's something that we're really keen to do more of.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Gabrielle, if I may. I could see some of your exhibits that involve, ingesting various things at any one of the millions of street or food-oriented street fairs that Chicago has. you know, see, that would be a very interesting kind of context to,
Yeah.
you know, do it all in seriousness and, you know, see what are people, you know, how are people reacting to these things?
Yeah, I think you're right. You're really picking up on something that I think this idea of public engagement with topics like this are really important, and it's something that it's where the contextualization becomes important. Like for us as artists, designers, we rely, for example, the designs for different features show, you know, the context in some ways, so you're sort of expecting to be titillated or shocked or not. But when it's in the street, in a street festival, food festival, I think that's a really compelling space where you are getting immediate sort of one-to-one conversations, and you don't necessarily you have to catch the same attention, but you are definitely provoking the discussions in context with the other sort of food festival stands as well. So yeah, we have to maybe be a bit more brave, I think. It's what
Yeah.
I feel like our response is.
Yeah.
How brave do you want to be?
Yeah, and I think, you know, to respond to Neil's point, I think, yes, I think there might be some ethical issues depending on what we're presenting and how we're presenting it. I don't really like the idea of tricking people, and so I think it would have to be done carefully, and yeah, I think I would want it to be something where there was some real kind of conversation that could come out of it, that it wasn't simply sort of spoofing the audience, as it were.
Yeah, I think, and Neil's earlier question about Katsuo Ishiguro's books, like that I forgot the name of the book where he wrote about these clone and these individuals who are actually like I forgot the name of it. You know what I mean? But I think that story is so incredible because it's so beautifully written, and then you slowly are built into that story and those characters and their emotions and their feelings and their kind of arguments for who they are versus what they've been sort of reared to be. And I think that's where fiction is really, and storytelling is so compelling. And you know, reading a book, and it turned into a movie as well, so it has these two layers of, like, when you enter a book, you know you're entering a world that's not, it's, you know, suspending disbelief, and the same with movies. But when it comes to installation of artworks, it's like a different kind of expectations, and you are potentially on edge as to what you're experiencing. And if it's outdoors, yeah, I mean, these are kind of conversations we have probably at school quite a lot with students, I think, as well. They're always trying to figure out like the ethical role of art and this kind of speculation.
Yeah, and that's also part, you know, that's why we're never trying to take these things through to some kind of production, because they are supposed to be satirical, so they all have some kind of downside to them. I think we've got a kind of little formula that we kind of figured out for this Venice project, like what does each of these objects have to do, and in terms of both like responding to research and to sort of particular kind of drivers that we see happening in society. They also have to have some level of kind of appeal. We want to, whether that comes through the styling of the object itself or the premise behind it. It has to be something that sounds slightly appealing, but then there's this kind of flip side to them, where you think, do you really want that, or is that really a good idea? Like if everybody felt like they had to microdose, or if everyone felt like they had to like take an IV because they were too busy to have lunch, so there's always this kind of negative aspect to them. So yeah, there's some great questions coming in, and yeah, so Ian says, I'm wondering if there are any punitive devices created for large corporations to use on their gig workers, or if that topic was avoided.
Well, I guess our original catalogue was both sides.
Yes.
Yeah, our original PDF catalogue that we made for the Open Society Foundations was looking at it from both perspectives,
employer and employee, and they sort of clash together in this kind of SkyML kind of context. And we were really interested in looking at like what would a corporation want to do. There was that surveillance context. There was about are you being productive enough? Then there's this kind of like devices to help you hear all secret conversations, and then there were devices to hide your secret conversations. And we were we were looking at both sides in that particular catalog. And I think with the vending machine, we ended up focusing on the nomadic gig worker specifically, and even now this time with the trade show.
Yeah,
I think we did have a conversation about that originally.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these objects that we're creating, there's this sort of implication that if you are in a situation where you have to use this thing, then you're probably in a kind of oppressive working context where you're a gig economy worker, you have so many jobs that you can't afford to eat or to sleep, or you're very short of time. Perhaps you're stressed, you're pushing yourself to a limit, so you need to test how far you can push yourself without going over that limit. So there are definitely elements within this current collection that hint at that, and we were absolutely responding to some of the things that we'd seen reported on. That, for example, Amazon warehouse workers having a personal device which had very strict time limits on it in terms of when they're working and how many minutes they can take breaks and things like that. So there was certainly a lot of news going on that was saying, well, this stuff is already happening, that there are already things out there that people are being asked to use. And I'm sure this community especially would have probably heard this already, but there was some software that people working from home were asked to upload onto their laptops that essentially monitored how much they were working when they were at home. So this kind of sort of surveillance technology is quite common.
I think we even, because this project started really in 2014, it's quite amazing how much things that you were discussing that weren't quite happening have sort of evolved to become more and more every day over 7 years. It's sort of like what you're saying, the surveillance software.
That's true. Yes, I mean, it's not something that we're particularly happy about, but yes, sometimes we end up seeing real products appear that we had sort of speculated upon something quite similar as a sort of bit of satire a few years previously. What else have we got here? How do you transfer, so Zimming says, how do you transfer your insights gained from research into a tangible form? Can you give an example about the process? Yeah. I mean, the microdosing, there was pretty direct translation there. Yeah. So we started reading about people taking very small amounts of psychedelic drugs, but as something to try and help them be sharper or to sort of enhance cognition. And it seemed to be something that was happening a lot in the programming industry. But so we wanted to research whether or not it was actually effective, and we found
as a productivity encouragement.
Yeah. And just so happens there's a University of Chicago lab who was doing the only double-blind placebo study of microdosing, and they got some really fascinating results. They found that microdosing did not increase your performance in cognitive tasks, but it did increase the amount of times that you would be willing to try those tasks. So it actually kind of, in a way, it kind of increased your effort, even if it didn't significantly decrease people's sort of results either, but they were sort of willing to try things more times. So that was some example of, so once we did that research, we thought, okay, well, there's at least some evidence there that this might be something that becomes even more of a trend than it is now. And so but of course, I don't know, once we looked into how to do it, and we've never actually done it ourselves, but the process of doing it just seemed really non-user friendly.
And it's illegal in the US.
And it happens to be
but
illegal.
We did speak to this incredible guy who runs a company that provides, their company produces LSD for the University of Chicago's double-blind placebo tests. And he was very cautious talking to us, but he understood that we were artists. But he was sort of telling us how the procedure of even making this stuff and then delivering it, and they're all monitored by who's the drug enforcement? DEA, that's it.
Or
one
FDA.
of those.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the point was that once we had done the research, we're then able to speculate on a product and say, well, what if this became a kind of common thing? So then you end up with a design brief, if you like how do you turn that into an actual object that we can produce. Okay, what else have we got?
That was something.
Yeah.
Neil says, aspects of this seem reminiscent of Kubrick, Clark's 2001, and Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, both brilliant references, where bizarre predictions of future technologies have actually or nearly come to pass. Have you considered the possibility that some of these objects might be reified in a few years? Probably.
Yeah, I wonder if you're hinting at the suggestion that someone might kind of take it seriously, and
they probably can't control how people respond to the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we think about, but I think we're trying to be very clear that it is a satire, and so, I mean, just like any kind of satire that you see, whether it's television or written, of course, anyone might take those ideas and use them for their own ends. But I think we feel that by putting them out there in this kind of context, we are at least trying to say, hey, this is a cautionary tale. We're not advocating for this. We're saying that this is a discussion piece about how we feel that there are certain aspects of the way that technology is used in society which are not good, and so it's better to have it out there and discuss it rather than just have someone really kind of doing it anyway.
Which I think is where the sort of fantasy and fiction and the timeline of the technological kind of capabilities are really interesting. Like, how convincing could it be? Is sometimes the question. Is it too convincing that it's so real it could exist? Obviously, we're always making props. We're not making these things for real most of the time. But does the technology, is it near or mid or longer term? Is it too, we would like to work with technologies that are a lot more sort of difficult to manifest into a material form, like the impacts of quantum computing or other sort of technologies that we would like to explore further, but we're not sure what the materiality will be of that yet. So I guess we're sort of creating things that feel or could be easily produced, perhaps. But yeah, it's like a constant framework that we're trying to work within.
Yeah, and we're obviously kind of limited by the fact that we are two people in a studio and don't have vast means.
But we can, but we do hopefully work with all of you at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we try and collaborate as much as possible with people who can do things.
That would be our next sort of, by interviewing people, that helped us sort of understand the context of where we're working. But the next step is like how to collaborate with people in such a way that by material experimentation and object and interaction, experimentation could be done. because we're just the two of us.
Yeah. Sure.
What did I miss? Ingesting caffeine. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's totally true of everybody. Maybe. Any other questions? These have been really great so far. Thank you.
I have a question. So, what fascinates me is the fact that, like you said, these devices are speculative, but they're very, very, very close to being an actual object that you can buy and people can use. So, for instance, the microdosing one, I can see how some people might want that, or the helmet. You know, Daft Punk, they have similar helmets, and now with COVID-19, I've seen some crazy, crazy helmets that people are designing, and probably the people that you interacted with and you got feedback, they would get the satirical and speculative um, concept of these devices. But I'm wondering if you have ever met somebody who would actually want them. So, for instance, biohackers, you know, they are this subculture and they're really biohacking. And if you can give them a drug and which will allow them to not sleep, you know, they'll be very happy about that. Not because they want to work 24 hours a day, but because they just hate sleep. They want to hack their body and all those things. Have you ever met somebody who, you know, looked at one of those of the objects you designed and said, you know, I wish I could have this, and what was the reaction?
I think we've not met anyone yet because this show, but I have had someone ask us through Instagram about the microdosing kit, morning ritual. And I think that's what's really interesting is like, is the conversation important to then have with them about why do you want this? You know, we are artists, we're making this as a sort of a question. But I haven't sort of questioned why they would want it. And I thought, I mean, I would want more of a conversation with them about it, but they would have to know that this is where the sort of, it's a prop for a discussion versus it's like a biohacker would probably want to, they would continue to use these objects no matter what. But
yeah, and I think also, certainly some of the pieces are perhaps closer to something that people might want than others, and that one definitely, I think, because microdosing seems to have become quite a trendy thing. Absolutely, I can certainly understand people going, oh, you know, this is a great idea, but I think if you think about it in the context of the project itself, where we're sort of implying that people really kind of need to, or feel the need to microdose, then it puts it in a slightly different context. You know, when you could say that about coffee as well. It's like, okay, it's one thing, you know, if you enjoy coffee, then great, but to feel like you absolutely have to have a coffee because you can't function, you wouldn't be able to achieve, you know, so which frankly is me, but but I don't, you know, if I was you know, in a situation in my job where I kind of felt like I was being forced essentially to do that, you know, then I think you sort of start to see the flip side of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where the question about this is where the language of design is really interesting. We use it as part of our artistic practice, I think, and therefore we're not selling or designing products for the mass market, but we're using the language of that, and I think that's something that maybe we are always exploring, and it's probably why it's like a desirable looking thing, is because we are used to seeing the design language being used to help us buy things, and I think maybe that's where we're always questioning, like, is this a desirable thing? What does that mean for an individual who wants something? We're not questioning or saying someone should or shouldn't buy something, but
you're more trying to reflect the culture.
Yeah, and I think that's what work like this is for us. That's what we want to have this kind of conversation. We want this kind of conversation. We're like, what is design and technology doing when it comes to our desires to live a best version of ourselves? Is it trying to make us better, faster, think, do all the things we think we're doing now to make us like biohackers, I think, are an incredible example, because they will do anything to, they have like a goal that's almost beyond what is capable of doing now. So they're trying to sort of lay a groundwork for future generations to hack themselves if they want to. They're almost like a research unit of their own, I feel like. But not everyone's doing that in the mass, but not everyone's doing that, but they sort of are with pharmaceuticals anyway. So we might think those biohackers are quite extreme, but actually we're already doing this stuff to ourselves. And I guess we're looking at it from a very existential perspective. So I don't know if that answers, that was a very long answer. But it's a really good question. I think this is a really important question.
I have one more. So have you done any research or looked in the past to see if there are other artists in the past like you who created these speculative devices for the future, and what happened? How many did they get, and which of those devices, actually became a reality and got broadly accepted by everybody? So, for instance, reading glasses, when they appeared, nobody wanted them and everybody hated them, and they thought it's unnatural and you should not use them. But now everybody's wearing reading glasses, and somebody could say that, well, with the reading glasses, people who get older now, they can work harder because now they're getting their vision back. So I can see how an artist maybe 100 or 200 years ago, or whenever the reading glasses were invented, they might have, device. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a really good question. About technology is always something that humans are wanting to use to help deal with something that they have that they can't do, like reading. I mean, this is a great example. And I think, yeah, I went to this great show in Spain a few years ago that was about the history of robots, the idea of the cyborg, the robotic automaton. And they had is it Da Vinci's automaton? It's incredible object. It's like, I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, I mean, Da Vinci's a good example anyway, because he
designed lots. We're not associating ourselves with Da Vinci.
No, definitely not. But he like design helicopters before, and they could be made, and there are lots of things that he came up with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. There must be ways that we've seen previously, like especially with the advancements of industrial revolution, like artists were cautionary about what does all of this, like going to space or being in a car, won't our heads fall off because it's so fast, our bodies won't be able to cope. There must be some good ones there.
I think it makes me think about some of the Italian radical design groups in the 60s. There was this group. Well, there were various of the Italian groups who made sort of speculations on the future, like Super Studio was one of them. There was also this group called Ant Farm. I think they're not Italian, I think they're American, but they made these, didn't they make these kind of transparent helmets? Was that
the hands?
Them? Yeah, it was Hans Hollein.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, there was quite a few groups in the 60s doing some kinds of sort of technological speculations. I guess it was kind of an extension of sort of futurism, but yeah, I think they weren't necessarily things that exactly came to pass, in terms of the technology. But yeah, there are always, I think, in art history, these little moments that crop up. Apparently, there was a David Hockney drawing from the 60s of a guy walking. You just see the back of him walking away, but he's got something in his ears just looks like a Sony Walkman, but many years before it was invented. So these things definitely do sort of crop up from time to time through our history.
Oh yeah, it's Hans Hollein. He did like a bubble.
Oh yes,
office.
Jess has found it. Hans Hollein.
Oh, yeah, he did that big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we run out of time, so let's do the last two questions. They're the chat.
Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that the neck support piece again. I think it's sort of similarly like I think I can see it just on its own. Someone being like, oh yeah, that seems interesting. And we've been having these kind of discussions about whether it looks too much like a kind of airline pillow. But I think again, if you put it in the context of you not being able to come home and sleep for the night, but if it's not so much about napping as about
this is your
only kind of sleep.
There's
then,
no bed sleep.
Then it has this sort of darker side to it.
That is the only sleep. Yeah, definitely.
And then Ian says, could a less dystopic future perhaps be found by looking to the past, maybe even pre-industrial? Well, yeah, I mean, I think partly what we're trying to do is not just critique the sort of ethics of technology, but also critique a kind of over-the-top sort of work ethic in a way. We don't think it's really a particularly good thing that people sort of feel like they have to work as much as they do.
Even though we're not critiquing that those who desire to, it's more like it's the existential bigger picture, like all that. Yeah. Well,
yeah. I mean, it's what society ends up creating a certain sense. I mean, I think during the pandemic, I think a lot of, certainly just anecdotally, I've heard that a lot of people are actually working more than they did before, and so certainly feeling under more pressure. So yeah, I think that obviously these things are set up, by the kind of individual societies and cultures, and it differs dramatically around the world. But I think it certainly seems that in the US in particular, there is this kind of pride in hard work that sometimes spills over, I think, into actually so people perhaps working to the extent that's perhaps not healthy. And I think certainly when you overlay that with the changes in society that are coming about because of the rise of the gig economy, where people's sort of benefit structures tend to be eroded, then I think you get into quite a kind of dangerous situation.
Yeah, the idea of looking back to the past, I think it's a really good point. There's so many examples of utopias that were created in the past by writers and thinkers and artists and philosophers, and I think some of those utopias are all reflective of the current time. So they're all reflecting on what is happening right now to make you want to create a utopian outcome. And I think for now the utopia is so hard to create right now. But I think it's what everyone needs. That's why I think the democratic kind of distribution of the tools of futuring is super important. And I think it's a social practice way of working with futuring, is that it's a tool that everyone needs to be very good at using in order to share more cohesive, inclusive ways of thinking about the future, which I don't think has happened especially in the US and the Western world. I think that's one way to change the way we think about utopias and looking less dystopic, and that's changing the idea who has access to the tools. And I think that's something that's coming about a lot with futurists that I know that are
trying to make sure that these tools are open to everybody. And this is just one way that we talk about our work. And we do a lot of making and storytelling, and that's kind of our tool of practice as artists. But I think that, yeah, less dystopic is important.
Okay, cool. I don't see any other questions. So again, thanks a lot for your talk. It was really, really interesting. And I think, at least for me, who I'm an engineer, you know, it's good to start thinking about the devices that we create and how they're going to be used. And because a lot of times, at least I myself, you know, I get really excited about technology. Like if I would see the helmet, I would be like, oh, I want to build this. And then, you know,
Yeah, totally.
but then you don't think like, why did I build this? And, you know, how is this going to affect other people's lives, and how people can use it in a bad way, let's say. And I think those are things that engineers and researchers, we have to start thinking more. So that's why I really enjoyed your talk.
Yeah, thanks, Victor, for pointing that out. That's really fascinating for us to hear. I think, yeah, we've been really glad that we could sort of share this work with a different type of audience from what we shared it previously. We did like a talk for the Walker Art Centre, and that was a different response. And I think questions were completely different. I think it's really good for us to be sort of pushed on stuff, especially from, you know, smart people who know what they're talking about when it comes to technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been really great for us to do this. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining. And we have another meeting next month, and hopefully I'm going to see everybody. And we have the meetup page and the email list, so everybody will get an email about the next meeting once we set it up.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone wants to get in touch, they can.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, it's just, oh yeah, I'll just put it in the chat quickly.
Okay.
Sure.
There is a question about the video. We will upload that to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
If you just Google ChicagoCHI on YouTube, you can find it. I will put it on the website too.
Great, thank you. Yeah, okay, well, have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.